In the quiet moments, that's where I'll find a little room to breathe, leave it all behind. Give me room to breathe, I need some time to heal my heart, to clear my mind. Gonna love myself, yeah, I believe in the power of me. Just give me room to breathe.
Great new day to all my self-care family and friends. Welcome back to the Room to Breathe podcast. I am your host, Life Coach 614, and I am so happy that you made space to be here with us today. Now, before we get into today's episode, do me a quick favor. If you're feeling the vibes, go ahead and show us some love. Tap that screen, like, comment, but most importantly, share this out with someone who may need a little healing energy today. And if this is your first time here or you haven't done so already, what are you waiting for? Hit that follow button, subscribe to our channel, so that way you're always tapped in when a new episode drops. I also want to personally invite you to check out our digital home at theselfcareclub.org, where you'll find everything from affirmative apparel to motivational merch and free resources to help nourish your growth and remind you that you're not alone in this. We're with you every step of the way. We are healing in community, growing one breath, one moment, one day at a time. So today, give yourself permission to pause, reflect, and to make space for peace, for growth, but most importantly for you. Now, if anything in today's episode hits home, drop a green heart in the chat. That is our community's way of saying that I am healing, I am growing, and I am showing up for me. Now let's get ready to breathe, reflect, and grow together. Family, today we have an amazing guest joining us in our Room to Breathe space. Dr. Greg Linkowski is here today to share his story. Now, just a little back history. Greg is a retired diagnostic radiologist with over 20 years experience caring for patients. Since stepping away from medicine in 2014, he has been diving into life coaching and just released his first book, Dare to Thrive. The book has been 30 years in the making, and in it, Greg shares his journey as a trauma survivor, offering real reflection on healing, his lessons learned, and his spiritual growth. Through his writing and coaching, his mission is to inspire and empower others on their path to recovery, reminding us that we are never alone. Family, help me welcome Greg into the Room to Breathe. Hello, Greg. How are you today?
Hey, Shantae. I just want to say thank you so very much for having me on your podcast.
Absolutely. It is definitely my pleasure. And I honestly believe that our community is going to benefit so much from hearing your story. Now, before we dive into that story, I like to do a soul check-in. So I'm going to start today's show by asking you, how is your spirit doing today?
My spirit, well, the truth be known, I'm 3.5 weeks out from right knee replacement surgery. As we speak, I'm icing my right knee. I am doing spiritually, physically, and emotionally better than I was doing last week, which was it was a tough week. It was a tough week having to resort to a little bit of mild opiate medication and dealing with the swelling and all the rest of it. What I've discovered is, much as I don't like pain has been a good teacher for me over the last few weeks. And my tendency, and I don't know if any of the audience out here tends to try to do more things per unit time than he or she can. I'm one of those individuals. And yesterday, I have to say, I asked God, I just reached out to God and said, God, please help me do the next right thing. And then leave my list off to the side and see what populates.
Yeah.
And it worked. So yeah. I'm all in. Shantae. I mean, I'm all in, just letting God direct me, because, I mean, even though, as you can see, I have an MD after my name,
Mhm.
uh, doctors are not God, even though
Yeah.
we're sort of trained to believe in some ways we're God-like. Uh,
Yeah.
I choose to go to the great physician.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know, MD could be more discernment, right? We need God, and we need to lean on that too. So yeah, I mean, that's just a reminder that no matter what our title is, we still need that connection. We still need to reconnect to the universe, whatever your higher power is, you know. So yeah.
Yes.
All right. So are you ready to dive in?
Hey, hit me with your best shot.
So I tend to like to start from the beginning. And so I know that in your book, you share openly about growing up in a home that's marked with chaos and addiction. What was it, what is it like carrying those early experiences into your adulthood?
Uh, a rather heavy burden,
Mm.
I would say. Uh, it certainly, uh, both the good and the really bad traumatic experiences are kind of all mixed in together. Um, and I have to say, one of the, I mean, there's a lot of things that are going through my mind right now, but one of the key things that I have done over the years, in fact, I spent over 3 decades in my own therapy, and that I truly resonate with. And I also know that you have been in your own therapy.
Yeah.
Uh, I I have to say, I applaud people who can can realize, okay, you know what? I don't have it all together,
Yeah.
and I've needed to make friends with a lot of things that happened,
Yeah.
and also realize I was not to blame.
Yeah.
And and even my parents, God bless them. I mean, my dad was a World War II veteran who was at D-Day, at Normandy in the Navy, and I'm sure had terrible PTSD, which of course in those days was barely recognized, uh, and really not treated. So I mean, Dad's medication became alcohol, and that is well is and was a generational curse in our
Yeah.
families.
Yeah.
Um, so it's the kind of thing I've. One of my brothers says, when he has told me when he became a parent, he basically questions sometimes when he had his children, what would mom and dad do?
Yeah.
And then he would tell me, Greg, I would then do the opposite. And so, there were a lot of challenges along the way, such that I'm just so grateful that through it all, God was still there.
Yeah.
He was there when I was a child. And, I happen to be, I was raised Catholic, and I was raised in a conservative Catholic blue collar background outside of New York City.
Hmm.
Um, I would say I've had plenty of knocks, and put it this way. I love to hear people's stories, because what I'm finding out as I get older, the more you realize someone's story, you realize all of us have gone through stuff. I
Yeah.
don't I don't know a normal person. And I'm certainly not.
I completely understand. I think the big thing that you said that a lot of people struggle to understand is that we are not our trauma. You know, a lot of our listeners, all of us, we experience our own generational trauma. And so it's important for us to know that our early experiences, they don't make it, it somewhat makes us who we are, in a sense of it shapes our view of ourselves and our view of the world. And so that's why therapy is so important, for us to be able to go and unpack, to say, okay, I am not my trauma. you know, I am not what happened to me, that in spite of what happened to me, that I still have a choice to be better, to do something different. And you gave a great example of that with your brother, saying, I look back and I say, what would mom and dad would have done? Because I think as parents, we all do that. We go back and say, what would our parents have done? What would our grandparents have done? And sometimes we follow in their footsteps by choice or otherwise. And then other times we completely decide to branch off and say, oh, I'm never going to do that. I'm never going to treat my children like that, because, we hit that point where sometimes in life we know better. So now we choose to do better. But in the same instance, some people know better and they don't. So it's just very important for us to accept the fact that we are not our trauma, and that in spite of our trauma, we can choose better. We can choose something different. So I love, what you said. I completely, as you were talking, I'm like, yep, I understand that, because I even love listening to people's stories too. That's why I do what I do, having the guests on Fridays, because it is a reminder to me that we are healing in community, be it intentionally or unintentionally. We all have trauma, regardless of what name we put on it, be it, neglect, abuse, whatever, trauma it is. At the end of the day, we all have trauma, but now what are we going to do with it? And I love being able to share, your story, my story, everyone's story, on how we are taking that pain and we are turning it into power. We are using it for a purpose, if nothing else, just to let other people know you're not alone.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that too, like when we think about those experiences in life, it has a ripple effect on our relationships moving forward. So I'm curious, again, not singling out your family's dysfunction, because Lord knows all of our families are dysfunctional. But, for you, how did growing up with this, family dysfunction and, the secrets within the family, how did that impact your relationships and your personal boundaries as an adult?
Not well. Not well. I unfortunately didn't have the role model of a father and mother who demonstrated, physical and emotional and spiritual love to each other. And it was, I think there was a time where I just assumed our family was, quote, the regular average family, and this is how you behave.
Yeah.
And an interesting, terrible experience happened when I was probably around 13 or 14. That's one of the sentinel events in my life that led me to really reflect on my family of origin and my upbringing. And that actually event happened when I was probably roughly 13 or 14 years old. My dad had been, his unfortunate demon of alcohol had really taken off. And there was one particular Saturday morning when Dad was very intoxicated, and Mom and Dad had been fighting, which was very common on Saturday mornings. That's what they do. They'd be bickering and they'd be yelling at each other. Anyways, Dad, something terrible must have happened in that Dad brandished his loaded 45 caliber semi-automatic gun and shot it into the floor of the kitchen and announced to us, "I'm going upstairs to kill myself."
Mm.
And Shantae, I can still drum this up. Now I'm 71 now, so it's whatever number of years, almost 60 years later, I can still reenact the scene. And mercifully, God was in the moment. My dad was staggering up the stairs because he was going upstairs with a loaded gun. And my mom, my sister, one of my brothers, and myself instinctively charged Dad. And I got to wrestle the loaded gun out of his right hand. I am so grateful that we were able to do that. And I also want to put a shout out to my next in line brother, who dutifully, immediately after that, confiscated all Dad's firearms and ammunition, and and anyways, that event was just another thing that was pushed under the carpet. We didn't get help, we didn't get any kind of family counseling. We just sucked it up. Yeah. And I'm sure a lot of other folks out there can resonate with, physical, sexual, emotional abuse, single families. I mean, at least my parents stayed together for the duration of their lives and fought it out.
Yeah.
And I must say, Shantae, I have had to work on forgiving them. That was a big thing for me.
Yeah.
Because it was so painful what was done and what wasn't done in our family, that we all suffered. I mean, we all my three other siblings and I all have a story of our emergence. I was blessed in that God saw fit to let me excel academically.
Yeah.
And I did very well in grade school, high school, and college. And I just knew I wanted to become a doctor. But the kind of doctor that I wanted to become was not the type of doctor that I became.
Yeah.
I wanted to become a psychiatrist. And I did not question why. I just knew that was my mission.
Yeah.
And then I discovered later in medical school that there's no way I could have pursued that path. As I was assigned the locked ward as a medical student, along with a few other students. And one weekend, one patient committed suicide while on the locked ward. And I have to say, a switch went off in my mind, like there's no way I could do this.
Yeah.
And so anyways, but then fast forward a bit, a year later or so, God saw fit for me to be exposed to radiology, which is a very different entity, but it's like imaging, putting together what's going on inside people. I fell for it. And I had a lovely career. I absolutely loved radiology, and I have to say I was pretty good at it too.
Yeah. Well,
but it was a good run. It was a good run. But the biggest accomplishment, I mean, without a doubt, is having my wife and I having our own children. That is the best.
Yeah. And I think that you bring up so many good points. thinking about, all of our childhood trauma, we grew up before the World Wide Web even existed, And
Mhm.
so in our families, growing up in the past, deeper than just the stigma of what happens in this house stays in this house, because you dare not talk about it and bring shame to the family, right?
Right.
But we had no idea what was happening in the world because these things aren't televised. These are the quiet things that no one talks about unless it turns fatal and it makes the 6 o'clock news, right?
Right.
So growing up in that generation, we definitely all have some serious major trauma. Like every single one of us, if you were pre, internet, you need therapy. Like there's no doubt about it. You need therapy because once the World Wide Web kind of opened up and we started realizing this is not the way that it should be, this is not the way that it has to be, things like that, we are now left to reinterpret. And so like you had mentioned, having to forgive your parents, that forgiveness is more so for them not knowing better. And it's like when we think about how we grew up versus the resources that maybe our children or our grandchildren will have, we have to be, merciful even that our kids forgive us, because technology is going to keep growing and evolving. And at some point, maybe they're going to look back and be like, Dad could have did this a little different. Mom should have did this a little different, but at the end of the day, being in a place where you can say, I forgive my parents for not knowing better or not doing better. And just, I don't know. I think it's a level of maturity for us to truly be able to just sit and say, they did the best they could with what they had. Could it have been better? Yes. Should it have been better? Probably,
And that brings up what's going through my mind right now is, isn't the ideal for parents, for particularly people who are just starting out as parents, to take what you've learned, take the good, and discern out what didn't work, and then do your very best to help facilitate making those precious children of yours, letting them then grow up and have a chance to, take things up a notch from what you were able to do. And I have to say, I am so enjoying like watching my daughter and son-in-law as parents, because I am learning about parenting.
Yeah.
And I even told them, I said, I wish I could have been your child. I know that sounds corny, but they're doing one heck of a job.
Yeah, no, I completely understand it. It's just a different vision of, especially because of what we've come from, being able to see life in the life that you contributed to. It's almost a pat on the back, or like, well done, Dad, to be able to see your children then go forth with their families and their children. And then, if you're blessed to meet your grandchildren and watch them, you know what I mean? Just all of those steps. It just, it's like, it's like when you plant a tree and that tree starts off small, and then 10 years later, you're looking out the window and you're like, I did that. I took care of that. I produced that, and even if you didn't always get it right, even if you didn't always water the tree or prune the tree or whatever, when you finally get to see it all mature, you're like, I poured my heart into that and I did the best that I could with that. And knowing where we come from and that we still poured into them, and, knowing that we created, wonderful human beings, it makes everything that we've gone through almost worth it, if you ask me, because I'd rather take it than for them to have had to take it,
Absolutely. And I think that, I do want to bring up the, probably the main experience that our whole family had, which was a very mixed blessing,
Mhm.
but and it was unasked for. But as it turns out, we had a second child named David, who was born about 3 years after our daughter was, and only to discover a few months into his life that things weren't normal, that David wasn't a healthy infant slash little baby, and I'll tell you the journey that we went on. We went on a journey, and this is a big shout out to those folks who have a child or a member of the family who has medical challenges, be that emotional, physical combination. We went through the life and subsequent passing of our son, David, who had a terrible seizure disorder and very severe developmental delay. And we became part of I guess you can say, an elite group of parents who have lost a child.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, it was a game changer for our family.
Yeah.
I actually started writing our family story approximately 30 years ago, when David was still alive. David lived from 1993 until 2002. Mm-hmm. What we went through as parents, now realizing we're both physicians, and some of the experiences that we went through in the medical system, we had some amazing experiences with some really wonderful people who were dedicated. And we're talking doctors, nurses, physical therapists, occupational speech therapists, different kinds of specialists all along the way. And I'll tell you, we've made so many friends. I do want to put a shout out to an organization that helped us dramatically along the way. And it's an organization called Johnny and Friends. Mm-hmm. And it happens to be Christian orientation. Their mission is to basically minister to families affected by disability, and they do a variety of different things. Like they even bring wheelchairs to the very underprivileged folks in the world, and yeah, they also give out Bibles and encourage people. But I have to say, they're doing God's work, and those folks came alongside us in our journey. And by the way, the person who originated Johnny and Friends, her name is Joni Erickson Tada. She's a quadriplegic as a result of a diving accident in the Chesapeake Bay when she was a teenager. She's approximately, I think, 75 right now, still alive and doing God's work. And I have to say, my heart is part of what my mission is to honor my son David's memory, and share a few things that we learned. One of them is, make sure you get the team together who are actually on your side. And I mean that very sincerely. We were praying for a creative miracle. We were asking God to heal David, mind, body, and spirit while he was still on earth. And we did a variety of stuff. And by the way, I still believe God's in the miracle working business, because for sure he is. And we've experienced a few, at least a few little mini miracles along the way. But
Yeah.
I am so looking forward to seeing David when God calls me home.
Absolutely. And I think I want to spend a little time, I guess, talking about the role as like a caretaker or a parent for someone who has disabilities. When you think of, kind of what all goes into that and what that looks like, how would you say that shaped your understanding of self-care and sleep and, prioritizing, like taking care of your body? Because we're pouring out. I mean, as I've shared with you, and my community is aware, I am a co-caretaker for my mother-in-law who has dementia. And so I know firsthand that we pour and we pour and we pour. But if, I know that if I'm not careful, my cup's going to be empty. So I'm just curious for you, how did, this role that you were tasked with shape your understanding about self-care?
Well, I will tell you, okay, and I'm kind of thinking of, oh God, whoever that actor is who has, I can't remember the guy. I don't know. There's some famous actor whose wife just came out with an article. He happens to have I think a neurologic condition, and the important thing is, well, we were very blessed. Okay, I'll just say this going in. We were extremely fortunate as far as our economic position. We were able to afford having a live-in nanny for the majority of time, and David was able to be home the majority of time. But we had extra backup. I think that's so important to realize that you can't keep on pouring out, and you certainly cannot give from an empty vessel. So important to make certain that you are caring for self. And I'm talking about, I know we both, I'm sure, have experienced sleep deprivation. I don't know. I have very much as a doctor. I mean, the training that I went through is, I would say, pretty horrific on one's ability to sleep, especially as an intern and as a resident. But it's so important to realize you can't do it all, and that it's imperative, to the extent that you can, to make sure that you allow people into your lives that you can vet, and whatever you can do to pull the team together. But what you can't do is, I think it's a huge mistake for people just to kind of exclusively take care of that person. Because my heart goes out to you. I mean, having a mother-in-law with dementia, there is no limit to how much you can be required to do.
Right.
And but yet, reaching out to God is so important, and finding space as best as you can to sleep when you can, to also take care of your temple by diet, by getting some exercise, and also being able, like, even support groups, which there are many, many different support groups out there, which, are of benefit, and like support from your church or your synagogue or wherever. But let other people into your life. I think that's so important. And there's a whole bunch extra. But one thing that Lynn and I did when David was alive, we had, and even when we had our young children, we would almost every week go out on a date with each other.
Yeah.
And, we had to beg, borrow, and steal, but nurturing your relationship, and it's tough. It is tough. It is tough to, to do everything. But the main thing that I do is pray to God that he can give me a balance and do the next right thing.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a balancing act, right? And I think that's what adulting is anyway. It's just a huge balancing act. From when you go from just being a solo person to then being married to then having children, even when you have children, even if everyone's healthy and happy, it's still a balancing act because you can't forget who you are as the individual. You have to make sure that you're pouring into your marriage, that you're modeling and pouring into the children and things like that. So life is just one big balancing act, because you also have to keep your spirituality, right? If you want God to keep blessing you, you got to also make sure you're pouring into your spiritual self-care and things like that.
Sure.
And, I've definitely learned that in order for me to thrive, I have to prioritize my self-care, and I was thankful and grateful when I finally learned, all that I began learning about self-care and, all the different pillars that comes with it. Because a lot of times people think self-care and they think of very cosmetic things, going to get your nails done or go to the spa, taking vacations, and all of those things are great and they're part of it. But when I really learned that, it was about my mental, my physical, my emotional, my, recreational, my intellectual, like all of these different pillars under self-care. That's when I think I really started to thrive. And I'm thankful that I had those resources available to me prior to stepping into this role of caretaking, because without it, I would probably look like 40 miles of bad road today because, I'm stressed. But thankfully, because I prioritize my self-care, I have the ability to not look like what I'm going through some days. I get to still put on a brave face and mean it when I say I'm okay today, and be comfortable enough to show up and say, hey, I'm not okay today too, because that's okay too,
Yeah.
So speaking of thriving, your memoir is titled Dare to Thrive, which, I think just really captures just the essence of kind of maybe rising above everything else, when we think about like healing and transformation and all that we go through in life. But I'm curious, what does thriving mean to you, especially after you've survived so much?
At this point in my life, okay, now I'm age 71.
Yeah.
Now, my wife Lynn does not like me saying this, but this is what I'm living by. Unless something miraculous happens, I'm in my last quarter, almost certainly. And the question to myself is, which quarter are you going to make that, Greg? Now, I've had a couple of health related things. So is my wife. My commitment is to live my life, whatever number of years, as my best quarter yet. Yeah. And so it's really important to me to share. I hope that I have a nugget of wisdom to positively impact somebody, even if one person on your podcast gets a morsel of encouragement. I would have to say it's totally worth it. I believe God has me showcasing my autobiography as my ministry, and I'm hoping that's absolutely true, and I'm leaving it up to God to show me, to show me my next steps in this journey. But I also realize, okay, we're not here forever, and what do I want my legacy to be? I want to be remembered as a fellow who loved as progressively, unconditionally as I could, or as I can.
Yeah.
And also, I want to be able to demonstrate generosity to my children and to other people, and also forgiveness, and also a sense of humor. But I'll tell you, I am so into our grandkids and our children, that it's, to me, life is full just with what God has given me. And I think it's important to take the time to be funny, to be silly, to be the best me. I don't have to be, a very serious professional version of me. I've been there and done that.
Yeah.
Now I'm just being who I am.
Yeah. I mean, and we get to make, what do they say? Life is what you make it, right?
Yes.
So yeah, we can sit and we can be all solemn and angry and just, but why? We get to experience, another day. And that's something that I honestly believe that we shouldn't take for granted. Yeah, things have happened in life that we would probably rather not have happened. And tomorrow, more of those things that we may not like may happen, but we get today. They always say that there's 2 days you can't do anything about, and that's yesterday and tomorrow. But that means I literally have all day today to focus on what I'm doing. And if I get to just show up as a better version of me today than I was yesterday, then mission accomplished. Yeah. I'll worry about tomorrow when it gets here,
And never give up. I mean, being from New York, giving up isn't in my vocabulary. Which actually can cut both ways. And I'm learning that about myself too. Yeah. Like sometimes it's hard. Like if I've determined that something is the right thing to do, I'm reluctant at times to change my position, but I'm also finding out that it is important to be able to pivot and to change direction. But the main thing is to enjoy the journey and to realize that this is a journey. We haven't arrived, and I'm excited to see just what God has even in store for the rest of today. I'm believing that good is going to happen. And by the way, love and good in the end triumph over evil. No question.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's plenty of evil, and we can, I mean, even showcased in the news, and there's a lot of blame to go around. And there's no shortage of pain in this world. I think what you are doing and what I'm doing my best to do is to throw something positive out there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what you just said too reminds me, I did a podcast. It may sound silly, but I did a podcast on matches and candles. And, talking about how the importance is to recognize that both have a purpose. And, when you think of a match, that match, its job is just to kind of spark something. The match is not here forever. It has a limited time. It burns for a very short time, but its purpose isn't to last forever. It's to ignite something else. And so I often say I want to be a match. I just want to spark positivity. Like, my purpose is just to spark someone else, to light someone else up, and then they go be the candle. Then there are also times in life that I wish to be the candle, because I want to be in your life for a longer period of time, because we know candles burn steadily and quietly and consistently, and they can light up, someone's life for a longer period of time. But the reason why I started thinking of this is because you were talking about knowing when to let go. And what I highlighted is that, I think that's one of the hardest lessons, is for us to understand when to let go. And so thinking of the match and the candle, matches aren't meant to last forever. And so when we try to force a match to be a candle, all we do is get exhausted and we get burnt out and frustrated, which ultimately just leads to self-abandonment. And so I think that sometimes, in turn, we try to be the candle for everybody around us. And we talked about that caretaking, right? So if you're not careful, then you're going to try to be the candle for everyone around you. And at the end, you're just going to burn yourself out, and you're going to give your energy away without ever replenishing it. And so we have to take the time to learn what our role is, to respect the matches of our life, the people who just pop in, pour in positivity, and then they're gone. I think of the authors of the world, right? How many matches am I surrounded by? People who pour into me with their book or their podcast, and then I never see them again. And then I equally love the candles in my life who maybe something else sparked it. Now we're connected, and I'm like, see you next year. Like, we're still in, like we're still in this together, but respecting the fact that both are valuable, and we get to do that too. So, like you said, if you're nothing but a match to our listeners, you're happy to have sparked that positivity. But if you happen to be a candle for some of them, you take that too,
Yeah. And my pastor, Doug, who wrote the foreword to my autobiography. I've known him for well over 30 years. Yeah. And one day I was feeling particularly down, and I was feeling, in essence, kind of burned out. And he said, Greg, God wants you to burn on, not burn out.
Yeah.
And that's so simple.
Absolutely.
But it, if God wants that for me, who am I to argue?
Yeah.
And God is for us.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the saying, if God is for you, who can be against you? There's a whole variety of truisms there. But yeah.
And I love that God is so intentional, and every single thing, down to the way we were created, the way he designed the world, and he places the matches in our life to ignite us, right? To spark something amazing in us. And he also provides the candles in our life to sustain us, which just basically means that every person that you encounter, every experience, every season has a purpose in our journey, as God intended it to, So I love being, a part of anybody's journey, be it me being a match or a candle. I'm just thankful for the opportunity and the ability, and to know that God trusted me to share that message. I think that everything we do is God's work when we do it with God in mind. So regardless of, like I said, what your title is, what your role is in the world, if you are out here trying to make a difference and you are trying to be better, and God is the forefront of what you're doing, then you're doing the work that he's asking you to do. And I think that's why a lot of people struggle with purpose. Everybody's out here trying to figure out what their purpose is. Why are they here? But they're not always looking to God for the answer. They're out here chasing other people to say, well, how'd you do it? You know, Greg, how'd you do it? How did you, get to this point? And you're like, go ask God, because that's how I did it.
Yeah, it wasn't me.
Yeah.
I have something corny to say. So, you've heard of that book, The Purpose-Driven Life, right?
Uh-huh.
Well, have you ever heard of the aquatic version of it? And that's the porpoise-driven life. Just a little play on words. I'm kind of corny.
Listen, I'm here for it. I'm a person that loves the dad jokes, okay? I still laugh at the jokes on the Laffy Taffy. So I'm here for it, okay?
Yeah. I tell people, it's like, it's really hard being me. And, and I tend to think of that when I say that in a humorous light, because it is. And, isn't it true that most of us, self included, are likely our worst critics, at least some of the time, is self?
Yeah.
And it's okay to give yourself a break.
Absolutely.
And realize, okay, I'm human.
Absolutely. It's hard for some people to understand that making mistakes is a part of the human experience. And so I always think back to, this is going to sound so crazy, but I always think back to when I was potty training my son. And it was him and his best friend, who happens to be like 3 months older than him. Uh-huh. So he had, an edge. He had 3 months of potty training ahead of my son. So he had it down pat. And my son was struggling. And so my son, I can just remember he's sitting on the potty and he's crying, and he is so emotional because he has to use the potty. And he's trying not to, but, his best friend just comes up, and it was the funniest thing. And it didn't become a lesson to me until the future, but I remember he put his hand on his shoulder and he looked at him and he said, "It's okay, buddy. Everybody poops." And so I didn't think of it then, but when I got older, I was like, you're right, because we all make mistakes, and one of my best friends, she used to always say when she would mess something up, because I was like her boss at work. So she would come to me and she calls me Tay. So she's like, "Ooh, Tay, I shitted it up," and she would always say that. And so when she said that, it took me back to the boys in the bathroom, and I started laughing, and I would say, "It's okay, friend, everybody poops." And so it's just that reminder that we all mess up, we all make mistakes, and with that, we have to show ourselves some grace, and we have to be able to forgive ourselves, because again, it's just part of the human experience. What do they say? To err is human. We all make mistakes. And so we have to be willing, like you said, to just cut yourself some slack and give yourself a break. Because if you're not careful and you sit in that space for too long, like the imposter syndrome is just going to take over you. And, it's, if you get too far down in it, it's sometimes hard to come back from that. It's deeper than just being a pessimistic person. It gets to the point where it starts to become who you are, and it starts to consume you if you're not careful. So you have to really mind your mental. Like I say that all the time to people, you have to mind your mental. You have to do it intentionally. In the same way we have to forgive other people, we have to forgive ourselves too. We owe it to ourselves. Yeah.
I do want to mention that my journey as far as actually really writing my story took approximately 2 years, between writing it, beta readers, editing, redoing, redoing. And I will tell you, okay, early on in the process, I hadn't been in therapy, my own therapy, for a couple of years. And I could feel myself emotionally and spiritually going down a path, a painful path, much more painful than I thought.
Mhm.
And I was flirting with the notion, okay, am I really worthy of sharing my story?
Yeah.
And so I was dealing with, am I an imposter? I mean, did I really live this life? My therapist helped me realize, yeah, you did. And it's important to put some feeling into it, Greg, because this is part of your healing.
Mhm.
And so I must tell you, okay, I wrote the book for my sake, for the sake of my children and grandchildren, even though not everybody in my family is on board with me having written my story. And it's just, it is what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And you deserve that, each and every one of us deserves to experience the healing of it. But the healing process looks different for all of us. And so,
Yes.
like you said, part of your journey was writing the book. Self-care became my healing. And I honestly, I would say that I was fortunate to hit my darkness and start therapy all right before the world shut down in 2020. So just like everybody else, I took to social media because that's all we had going for us at the time, because we were all trapped in the house with nothing to do, So I went on social media and I began what I didn't realize then, but I know now, was healing out loud.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just talking to other people online about what they were going through, what they were experiencing, things that I had experienced. And before long, I started realizing I created a self-care community. Just people showing up, like-minded individuals who wanted better, just wanted to talk it out. Other people who were sitting there like, me too, and then people messaging me saying, what you said today really helped me because this is what I'm going through, or this is what I'm dealing with. And I hadn't taken any, courses at that point. I didn't even know life coaching was a real thing at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody just kept saying, you should be a life coach. You should do this. You should do that. And I'm like, what is that? Is it a real thing?
Mm-hmm.
But it was because I got set down by God to say, okay, listen, you've ran from this pain and this trauma long enough. And it wasn't something in particular that happened in the moment. It was just, now you're going to deal with everything because, I was being sat down to say, you remember this. There's no need to say that you didn't. Yes, you are worthy of healing. And so me sitting down and going to therapy, and then the world completely shutting down because of COVID, that was honestly, I think for me, the universe's way of shutting everything out and not giving me an out, right?
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't go out anywhere. I couldn't ignore it. I couldn't avoid it. Now I'm stuck in the house to sit with all of my demons, quote unquote. And so I learned that, yeah, my story matters and that I'm worthy of forgiveness and I'm not my trauma and, all of these things. And I'm still learning it ongoing because as you know, healing is a process and it's an ongoing process, and you don't stop healing, until God calls you home. You're forever healing. So for people who think they're in it and then they're out, you don't get out. It's like a gang. You get jumped in, you're never getting out of it.
Healing is also a choice, and and there's so many choices out there. Hopefully, like I think of that movie Raiders of the Lost Ark. I think on the last one, he chose poorly.
Yeah.
And then you chose wisely.
Yeah.
There's my mind. I tend to go with movie clips a lot because, as it turns out, one other challenge that our family has, that our family is working through, is our third child, Sammy, who's he's 28 right now. Sammy happens to be gay, and and he that was a whole nother opportunity for me to face my own prejudices and my own convictions,
Yeah.
and do some rewiring. In that I'm at a place right now where I love my son Sammy with all his heart, with all my heart,
Yeah.
and all his heart too. And he happens to be an entertainer down in LA, and I love going to shows that he participates in, and also his significant other. But I'll tell you what, life is really full. And for those of you out there who have a member of the family who may have a different sexual orientation, one thing that I will say is that I'm learning not to judge and realize, okay, my role as dad is to love, is to equip, is to be a good advisor and a champion for our kids. And as far as the judging, that's between the individual and God.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not my role.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think a lot of times people in general, parent, whoever, just people in general, when we are confronted with what is unknown to us, things that are foreign to us, we have the tendency to judge, or, we think that we're right. And if in our life, if we've lived life a certain way or walked a certain line, that this is how it has to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one of the other things that I say is a blessing when it comes to social media and the internet, because it has opened doors for us to see life in a different way. And so things that we've been ignorant to for so many years, we now can acquire the knowledge about it, and we can learn more about it. And again, it's a learning curve, because we're from that generation that didn't have the internet to begin with. And so having that openness in your heart, because not everybody's open to learning new things, but having that openness in your heart and just allowing the love for your child to even, having the love for your child to, I guess, open your heart to also then open your mind to say, hey, you know what, regardless of who you choose to love is love. I just want you to, experience love and be loved. And, to know that I'm here for you. Like, I'm always going to be dad, not everybody's open to that. And so I definitely applaud you for that. And I know that it's always going to be an ongoing thing, because not everybody's open to it. And, everybody has to kind of walk their own journey, into accepting. For some of us, we think it should just be normal for us to accept people for who they are. And, if we're children of God, we should believe that, we're all created equal and da-da-da-da-da. But at the same time, some people interpret, the Bible in different ways. And they think that, oh, that's a sin, and oh, it's this. But, we shouldn't be the one to cast the stone, right? We leave it to say only God can judge us. And so again, I definitely just applaud you for even being open to the experiences that you're going through in life with your son, and with anything else that you encounter in life. Because there's always going to be something that happens that's new to you, and maybe you agree with it, maybe you don't agree with it. I mean, every 4 years we get to go vote for a new president, and some are red, some are blue, and some are somewhere in between. But at the end of the day, as long as we understand that he or she has the right to choose, just like I have the right to choose, and we can just agree to disagree, I think that's the only way to be, regardless of what the subject is.
Yes.
Yeah. So I have I guess almost a final question or another question for you.
Yes.
And I'd love to ask this question because it gives you the opportunity to speak directly to my listeners. So for our listeners who may feel stuck or uncertain, what practical first steps would you suggest for them in beginning their healing journey from their trauma?
I can share with you what's worked for me. And I believe it's really important to have some type of faith walk, some type of spiritual journey. And, I happen to have a rich background in Catholicism, and these days I'm practicing kind of a more non-denominational Christianity. I have found great comfort in my spiritual walk. I've also found comfort in daily prayer and reading the Bible. That has worked for me. I'm not saying that must be the script for everyone, but some people find a tremendous amount of satisfaction out of simple meditation, breathing, and it's, again, the basics are diet, take care of your temple, eat, do your best to eat well, to nourish your temple, and drink plenty of water, and also do your best to exercise most every day. Even a simple walk, even a simple 30-minute walk is helpful. But do your best to strike a balance. And when things are out of, a person knows when their life things are going down, and it's important not to wallow in your own misery. Believe me, my life story, I've had a few significant hits. I am not alone. There is no shortage of pain in this world. So if you think you're going to pass by that, you're sadly mistaken.
Right.
But practical things can be support groups of, depending on what you're dealing with. Like, for instance, if you're dealing with, with alcohol abuse, some people like AA, some people like Christian version, like Celebrate Recovery. And there's innumerable online groups that one can look into. I'm a big fan of getting your own individual therapist should the need arise. And also, if you're in a really, really dark place, there's everything right with being open to pharmacologic help, for instance, anxiety and depression. There are some really good medications out there. There are some good practitioners, that psychologists, marriage counselors, social workers, psychiatrists. My wife happens to be a psychiatrist, but avail yourself. These days, one doesn't have to suffer in silence. Yeah. And you mentioned about the internet. You are spot on. Search the internet. Reach out to people. Get a mentor. There are a whole bunch of things that are. I know I have a little bit of loosening of associations, but there's a variety of things. But be real to yourself.
Yeah.
And do your best to be kind.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think it all boils down to, like you said, seek help and help different for everybody. So just seek help, even if it just means going and talking to your family or having a trusted friend, just having that conversation, especially when you don't know where to go and you don't know what to do. The first step is saying, I'm not okay.
Yeah.
But I want to be, I'm not okay today, but I want to be. Because again, everyone can identify with having a day or year or decade of not being okay, and understanding that that's okay, because to have the light, you have to experience the dark at some point too. So
absolutely. And realize, okay, that to me, the sum total of what I've seen in life, and this is from speaking with my doctor's hat on, life itself is totally miraculous. And the only way it makes sense is that there's divine design. It's the only way. And I don't have any other explanation, but I'm glad that I believe what I believe.
Absolutely. Yeah. The best way I sum it up when people say, how does this work? Or, even as trivial as how do the planes stay in the sky? And, people will tell you technically how it happens. And I'm like, nah, God did it.
Absolutely.
Like God did it.
Absolutely.
I don't need to know how he did it. I'm just thankful and grateful that he did it, So, yeah. Having a higher power to tap into, because I feel like humans, we let each other down. Again, remember, it's human nature. We're going to disappoint. We're going to mess up. We're going to make mistakes. So having something higher than self, higher than, mere mortals, gives you something else to believe in. And honestly, I would rather believe that there is a God than to not believe and found out the hard way that there was. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah, 10 out of 10, I recommend. So, Greg, I want to give you an opportunity. What did I think you said it earlier? A little shameless plug.
Oh, shameless promotion.
Yes, pull out the book. I have a Kindle copy, but you've got the hard copy right there. So pull out the book.
This is a true story. That's all I can tell you. It's not every single. Put it this way: I don't throw anybody under the bus. I just want to leave it like that. But it is a true story of some events that this particular guy that happened in my life, my interpretation of it, and also with a bent and a hope that God is getting the honor and glory through this process. It's not about me. My life is we're brothers and sisters. I'll tell you, just that I definitely feel, and that's how I roll.
Yeah. No, I'm right there with you. I always say that my history and the things that I've gone through, I write the music and do the podcast and blog. I do all of these things under my Room to Breathe umbrella, because I want what my history, what was done for me in my history to then become her story. So that way, when someone else hears it, they can say, okay, you know what? Shantae got through it. I'm going to get through it too. That I'm worthy of this too, that I'm deserving of this too. So I love that you just honored your story and decided to write it, and to share your truth. And, like you said, you and your siblings, you're all going to have a different perspective of life, even though you grew up under the same roof. Life was different for you. And the fact that you decided to share your perspective, it's going to bless somebody. And I have a feeling that it's going to bless a lot of somebodies. And so I'm just thankful and grateful that you've, chosen to come here and to be able to share your story, your wisdom, and ultimately just sharing your heart with us. For me, I will honestly say, just hearing the little parts that you've shared with me in this last hour and knowing that I'm going to read the book, hearing your journey of, the way you've navigated your trauma and, your story about caregiving and just your healing walk, your faith walk, you embracing self-care, faith, forgiveness, all of these things. I think it's just such a powerful reminder, again, to me, but for many others, that no matter what life throws at you, we have the strength within us to rise, to heal, and to thrive. And so I just appreciate your honesty.
Thank you. And by the way, if anybody feels led after having read my book of posting a review on Amazon, I would be very grateful. And Shantae, I can't tell you how much I appreciate having been on here with you.
Absolutely. I'm thankful and grateful for your presence as well. Now, family, I hope that you have taken a moment to just breathe all of that in. Remember that thriving isn't about perfection. It's simply about showing up for yourself, prioritizing your peace, and choosing hope every single day. And, whether you're navigating your own healing journey, if you're in the process of caring for someone else, or maybe you're just somebody who's learning to set boundaries to protect your own energy, just know this: you're not alone. I want to again thank Greg for leaving us with such a powerful message of hope, resilience, and empowerment. Family, if you want to connect with Greg, I have the information scrolling on the screen. I will also link his information in the description, so that way you can pick up a copy of the book. As he said, after you read it, leave him a review. That is how, that is our reminder, when you leave comments and reviews, that it's almost our confirmation that we're on the right track, that we're doing what we set out to do. So again, be sure to, get in touch with him, contact him, let him know how his story has impacted you on your journey. And as always, family, before we part ways, let me leave you all with a little love and light. I always encourage you to keep breathing through the highs, the lows, and every moment in between. I want you to keep choosing peace, even if it feels just out of reach. And know that here at the Self-Care Club, you will always be seen, always valued, and always supported. So don't be afraid to take up space, speak your truth, and make a little room for you to breathe. I love each and every one of you to life, and I am praying that your day is not just amazing, but aligned, intentional, and yes, on purpose, filled with purpose. Until next time, take this wisdom into your hearts, breathe, reflect, and continue showing up for yourself. You've got this, and we've got you. This has been another Room to Breathe podcast, and I look forward to connecting with you all again soon. Thank you.